explaining things. And notice they're all throughout the map. And if you look at the map, anyone notice anything very strange about the map? This is a map of the world.
No, America.
That's certainly the case.
It's flat.
It's looking from, this is the South Pole, that's the North Pole.
That's the whole thing, that's the whole world?
Oh, wait.
No,
this
the
is
South Pole
This is
is-
the South Pole at the top,
Yeah.
and this is the North Pole down here. This is the Mediterranean area. Here's Spain, Africa,
It's little.
It's like inverted.
Italy. So, and notice how small the ocean is. Oh, we could just swim across that, maybe,
How big is the map, like in real life?
It's like 7 foot by, it's a full wall space. So it's much easier to read than this. I think there's multiple copies. How did I get there? There we go. But notice 1450. When did Columbus first sail the ocean blue? 1492. Yeah. So this is a map that basically Columbus might have had in mind. And by the way, Columbus and his contemporaries knew that the Earth was round. That was not the question. So that the goofy thing of this ship falling off the edge, no, that's not a problem. The issue for them was how big was the Earth? So that if you're trying to measure how large the Earth was and how much ocean there was before you would get to the Indies, the hope was that there would be a shorter route, right? Because by this time, Vasco da Gama, I think it was, for the Portuguese, had sailed around and up this way, right? And that was so long, etc., that they ended up making bases, for refueling and not refueling, but refooding, basically, water, food. It's kind of interesting if you ever read Michener's book, The Covenant. Michener is a novelist. I think he's dead now. And he wrote a lot of. That happens to people. But no, he wrote The Covenant. He wrote Chesapeake. He wrote Texas. He wrote a book called Alaska, which is this thick, Alaska. In fact, the editor made him cut some of it out, and so they actually printed 2 books. The book about the guy bicycling down the Yukon, that was a separate book. Hawaii, Hawaii. The Source is like the history of Israel. So basically he wrote books, about history, but he put them in novel form. And as a result, they weren't boring history, they were an interesting novel. Why did I bring him up? There was a reason for it, but I'm losing it. Augmented map. Yeah. Well, I put all these things here for me to remember, right? And so that's. But the Frome Oral map. So Columbus and his contemporaries all knew that the Earth was round. The question was how big it was. Columbus thought it was much closer. That the route was closer. His friends were saying, it's not. No, you're not going to reach it. And what actually saved him, of course, was discovering a continent in the middle, because otherwise he would have clearly run out of everything before making it all the way to the Philippines or those other places. But so this is the time period we're looking at, and looking at René Descartes. what we'll focus on next class will be the famous line, cogito ergo sum. Or in English,
Dude, I don't know.
I think, therefore I am.
Now I do.
Je pense, donc, suis. Right? Which was also the French. He was French. So we'll be looking at that and seeing what significance there is in his establishing a whole new basis for knowledge. The beginning of the modern period. Notice he's not a priest, he's not a monk, he's a civilian, lawyer, engineer, scientist.
They also come up with like the graph that we use in mathematics a lot.
Yes, well, the Cartesian coordinate system.
Yeah.
Cartesian,
Yeah.
that's, yes?
The story I heard is that he was sick and he would stare at the ceiling and he could just imagine it. Like that's got to be a really bad fever. Like for you to imagine that.
He's definitely an interesting guy. My favorite book on him is by A.C. Grayling. It's a relatively recent book. And what Grayling argues is that he was a spy for the Jesuits, which is pretty darn interesting. Because he was traveling around after he was out of the army, traveling around, and most of the places he traveled were where the enemy forces were. And then he came back to Paris to report on what he had seen.
And he was French, so was he fighting the English?
No, the French weren't fighting the English at the time. They were fighting various kingdoms in Germany. They didn't have a Germany yet, but there were all kinds of
The lovely HRE.
yes, which was neither H nor R nor E.
As Voltaire liked to say.
This is too much fun, isn't it? Anybody joining me upstairs for a while?
I guess I will, since I don't have a lot to do today, besides Spanish.
I should learn Spanish.
I used to. I forgot most of it.